from Hairdressers Journal. Welcome back to our HJ Goes Live. This morning we're talking about all things hair loss. So August is Hair Loss Awareness Month, and Nioxin wants to urge hairdressers to get honest and open with their clients about thinning hair. It can be a really tricky topic to bring up, but there are expert ways of making your clients feel comfortable and solutions to help them tackle this head on. This session is supported by Nioxin, and today we are joined by Nioxin Trichologist Mark Blake. Welcome, Mark. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's our absolute pleasure, and I'm really excited to talk about this in more detail. I know we were speaking a little bit before we came live, but it's such a huge topic, and I think this will be such an interesting conversation for hairdressers and how they can help their clients in the salon. So to start things off, as August is Hair Loss Awareness Month, what would you say is the key point you want people to know during this year's Awareness Month?
My key point is to talk about it, because it's one of those things that the client looks in the mirror and is feeling that they're losing their hair, and then sometimes the hairdresser is nattering on about holidays and Love Island and things like this, and you know, people are suffering with this depression and sort of low self-esteem, and all you've got to do is start talking about it, and they just open up straight away then. And I think that's what's really good, because Nioxin has really helped people raise this awareness. And 50% of people normally, excluding COVID, have got some form of hair loss. So if every other person is suffering with hair loss, you know, we're all trying to get people into retail and trying to get people into color, but it's such a huge untapped market. And I say market because it is a market, it is a way of making money, but it's also a way of helping people. So, you know, it's a bonus really that you can help people get sort of thicker, fuller hair and achieve the sort of look they're wanting, really.
Amazing stuff. And if you do have any questions for Mark as we go, please do pop them in on the comments on Zoom or Facebook as we go, and we'll make sure we get to those at the end. But next question from me, why is it so important that hairdressers don't ignore the issue of thinning hair and tackle the issue head on with their clients?
Well, the one I think I said before we came on air is you know, hair loss is one of those things, it gets worse. So if somebody ends up with no hair, they don't need a hairdresser. So it's all in our interest to actually make sure people have got as much hair as possible, and it grows as quickly as possible, because, you know, that's great for business. But like I say, hair loss is this slippery slope. It just gets worse and worse and worse. If you do nothing, you know where it's going down the slope. So the idea is to stop it, and then you've actually got hair that you can work with, and you've got choices. And there's nothing better in life than having choices, because if you've only got 3 hairs on your head, you actually don't have a choice of how you wear your hair. And that's not a very exciting thing for a hairdresser, but also it's really, you know, one of those depressing things for the clients as well. So we want to get people into the salons. We want to talk about it. We want to do what we can and help people, really. We don't want them going on Google and looking up things like, oh, I'll buy some aloe vera because that's going to help my hair. And no, we want them to get the right things and the right advice, really. And that's where hairdressers really come in, about talking about this. And like I say, every other person walking past your salon is actually losing some form of hair loss. So the great thing about this is that the audience is there, the market is there. You don't even have to really look for it. You just have to sort of raise your flag and say, I'm talking about it, and watch people come in.
That's really interesting what you said there about people going on the internet and finding information. And I guess as hairdressers, being able to arm yourself with that knowledge, you can really help people who are kind of, you know, really lost for their answers of what's going to actually help them.
Yeah, there's so many fake things out there. It's unreal. You know, when you start looking on Google, before you know it, you could have Ebola, you know, just if you've got a runny nose. So you have to be very careful, and you're going to waste a lot of money on things that aren't necessarily going to work. And we want you to use the right things at the right time. And I always say, I say it to my wife, actually, she's got all these lovely products, but none of them work in the bottle. They only work when you use them. And I find, people buy all these things, they've got them lined up in their bathroom, but they don't work in their bathroom. They work when they're on the head. So it's giving people the right advice, when to use them, and knowing about, one of the products that I advise about using is using it before you go to bed. And so I always say, put it by your toothbrush. It doesn't matter how tired you are or drunk you are, you always clean your teeth before you go to bed. And so if it's next to your toothbrush, then you know to use it. And so it's sometimes giving people that information that helps them when to use it, because it's a bit sort of, oh, just use this once a day. And they're like, well, when, how often? Do I wash it? Do I put it on dry hair or whatever, really? So yeah, giving them the correct information.
Fantastic. And I suppose hair loss with a lot of people can be quite a sensitive topic, as it is such a personal thing. How do you, as a hairdresser, broach the subject of hair loss with clients? Perhaps if you've got someone in the chair in front of you and you are noticing that there's some thinning or patches of hair, how would you broach the topic?
Yeah, you have to be careful, because you don't just go straight in there with both barrels and say, hey, you're losing your hair. I think you're looking at things like it seems to be less dense than normal. I think we need to try and see if we can sort of make it a little bit thicker, fuller, and just plant some seeds, really. Once you give people a few bits of information, they say, yeah, it's not what it used to be. And as we age, these things tend to happen. We find it, females especially, as they get older, they have menopausal issues, and so they might have some thinning from sort of hormonal issues, but also they don't absorb vitamins and nutrients quite as well. So it might mean they have the healthiest diet in the world, but if they're not absorbing things, then you're actually going to start having less hair. And as a trichologist, we see sort of miniaturization. So you've got still the same amount of hair, but that each hair is getting thinner and thinner and thinner. So all of a sudden you can see your scalp, but technically you've still got the same amount of hairs, but they're just not giving the job that they used to, really. So yeah, and hair is the second most prolific cell producer in the body. We grow between 0.3 and 0.5 millimeters of hair a day, which doesn't sound a lot, but you've got between 100 and 150,000 hairs on your head. So you put that 0.3, 0.5 millimeters end on end, multiply it up by 100 to 150,000. That means today you'll grow 36 meters of hair in one long strand. And so you can only grow 36 meters of the good stuff if you're absorbing the correct nutrients in the correct way. You'll still grow 36 meters of the iffy stuff, but you want to grow 36 meters of the good stuff. And this is where hairdressers can come in and give some advice on this, really. Says, I think part of what I do, I run a course with Nioxin about teaching for hairdressers to look out what they can do when people come in the salon, because I'm a bit like a Sherlock Holmes. From the moment I shake your hands, I'm feeling if your hand is cold. Does that mean you've got a thyroid problem, or if you just had a cold drink? Have you got lateral thin of the eyebrows, excessive facial hair? All these little clues. Have you got hairs on your shoulders and dandruff? Or there's all these things, and you're scanning and looking, and then you can sort of tailor your conversation or consultation around this and give people sort of helpful things, really, helpful advice.
Amazing. And that leads really nicely on to the next question, which is, once you've raised the topic and the subject of hair loss with the client, what are the next steps that you would recommend that they take once you've raised it with them?
Well, there's over 50 different reasons for hair loss. So you have to sort of start whittling it down. So the main thing, really, what I would say for hairdressers is to give some nutritional advice, because like I say, you've got to grow 36 meters out of what you eat or retain. And the other thing is to actually sort of make sure that they're using the right products. Nioxin is great because I always say that it allows you to have thicker, fuller hair instantly, because you can fake it until you can make it, because nobody can leave. I can't, as a trichologist, make you have better hair today, but I can over the next 6 months, hopefully. So what we want to do, people don't always want to wait. So Nioxin is great at faking it until you can make it, using the right products in the right way, giving them thicker, fuller hair while you're working on the inside as well. So, stylists can do a certain amount, and then possibly they have to hand them over to myself, a trichologist or a dermatologist, or even a doctor. But doctors are not always the best people. You know, doctors are very much there, and I know this is a sweeping statement, they're there to stop you from dying. And, you know, hair loss is considered cosmetic. And so they don't always have a lot of time for it, really. So quite often you'll phone up and, you know, a lot of doctors are men, they've lost their hair, they're not really interested. So I think that's where the trichology side really scores at the moment. We've got to give people enough information or a bit of guidance, but initially the nutrition and using the right products is the best way to start that journey. And then it's all about eliminating things. We use a differential diagnosis as a trichologist, and we rule out what it's not, and what's left is what it is. So it is just whittling down the things, and we know then what we can hone in on.
Fantastic. And I know we were speaking before we came on there about if you've noticed more men or women coming to see you. And I know you mentioned that you're seeing a lot more females coming in. Why do you think that increase is? And can you explain why it might be? Is it the pandemic, increased stress, or all of the above?
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely more females than males at the moment, and you know, I'm absolutely booked up for ages. And females seem to have had a bigger impact on this. When you know, females have a much more stressful life because they're juggling their children, they're juggling work, and there's that whole worry. So when you'll get hair loss if you've had COVID, but a lot of people are worried: are they going to get COVID? Are they going to lose their job? How are they going to cope going back to work? There's lots of things, really. There's all these stresses, and these stresses really do lead to usually a temporary hair loss, a telogen effluvium, or as the Americans say, a telogen effluvium. And you know, it is a temporary hair shedding, and you take away the causative factors, and then usually the hair starts to grow again. But however, this all happens in arrears, so it can take about 3 months to notice the hair loss after this causative event, and it can take maybe 6 months after before your hair starts coming back. You know, hair takes a month to be made underneath the skin, and then another month to come up through the sort of follicle opening, and then on the 3rd month you'll see a tiny little bit of hair. But that's if it hasn't had the 3-month resting phase or longer from where you've had this shedding phase. So you know, it's a slow process growing hair, and that's why we have to give people as much advice as possible, and to try and make it grow as quickly as possible, really.
That's really interesting as well, about saying that you don't see it happen until a few months down the line, and then it could take longer. So I guess that's really important to suggest to your client as well in managing their expectations of their treatment.
Yeah, people always think it's, oh, well, I was ill last week and this, that, and the other, or I broke up with my boyfriend or whatever last week. But, you know, the problem usually is a lot further back. And so we always look in arrears, really, and then start back from there, really. It does take a while. And, you know, looking at your hair, you know, to grow hair down to your ends would possibly take 5, maybe 6 years sometimes. And so, you know, to just suddenly find that you'll want to grow your hair like that, it is a slow process, and we have to cover all our bases. And that's why I say, with nutrition, with health, sleep. You know, sleep is a big thing. That's when our body repairs. So we have to make sure we're getting enough sleep, enough water. There's lots of factors, really. We just take it for granted. And also I always say it's the soil that hair grows out of. You know, you probably use these lovely skincare creams on your face here. And then we have this invisible line where we then don't do anything. We just abuse it. We do some shampoo, and you know, you might spend, I don't know, £100 on this lovely skincare cream, but 0 on a scalp exfoliant. And Nioxin do one of the best scalp exfoliants, a dermabrasion, which it cleans off your scalp, and it loves eating dead skin. And I always say it cleans out your follicular orifices and takes off all this sort of fauna that lives all over us and gives us the ideal soil for hair to grow out of. But most people don't do any of that and just think, well, yeah, my hair's it's okay, but it could be better. And it's all about, scalp health is directly linked to hair health. And so we've got to cover our bases. We can't just have this invisible line here where we just totally abuse the skin from here back.
Amazing. And is that treatment something that hairdressers and salons can offer in the salon?
Yeah, I mean, it's a quick treatment. You apply it to a dry scalp and massage it in for a couple of minutes, and leave it for 10 minutes. And like I say, it just eats dead skin and calms the scalp down and cleanses it. And so because we exfoliate our face, but we don't exfoliate our scalps. So we need to make sure that the right growing conditions are there. We can't just say, oh, my hair's not looking great, it's thinning, and do nothing about it, and then go on Google and think, oh, I'll buy some aloe vera and life will be happy again. No, it's not going to happen.
That's super interesting. And there is a big demand for advice and treatment for thinning hair and hair loss now. Why do we need to be talking about this with our clients and giving them solutions and building that kind of loyalty within the salon with the client as well?
Yeah, it's a huge thing. And I think I said to you earlier that, we have color specialists in the salon, and but we don't have thinning hair specialists. And people always think hair loss, but I think, to me, the first area is thinning hair. So you need to make sure that sort of, we're covering thinning hair. And I think we should have thinning hair specialists. And I'd love to see it sort of included in all hairdressers training, how they can get the best out of hair. And so I think once we start getting into this in the salon, if you've got, certainly as I started training as a trichologist, the amount of hairdressers, and, hairdressers now, a lot of the British hairdressers of the year send me patients because they don't know what to do with these people. And, it's building up trust. And I know I still cut hair 3 days a week, but I know I can go up to somebody and I can feel their head and I can tell them something about their hair they've never heard before, whether it might be the shape of their scalp. And I'll say, oh, you've got some Irish ancestry, you've got some Oriental ancestry or whatever. And so people are so interested in it because they might have been going to the hairdressing salon for 30 years and nobody has told them anything like this before. And so partly what I do with advising people on a bit of nutrition and the products to use, it's about building up trust. And once you've got their trust, they will just, well, one, they'll buy the correct products. And I'm not talking about one product, I'm talking about 2 or 3 or maybe 4. They'll happily buy this because you've got the trust. And you can only recommend products that do work. But the other thing is, you'll notice that they tell their friends, because it's a different type of trust they've ever felt before, that this person knows what they're talking about. And I think all hairdressers, once they've built that trust, that the clients are never going anywhere else.
Fantastic. And as you work with Nioxin, how does it make you feel working for a brand that is being a pioneer within the industry and has built so much towards the research of hair loss?
Yeah, Nioxin, I've got to say, it's one of those companies that, they started off in the US and they're here, and they've really sort of taken the hair loss, hair thinning market, to the hairdresser, the high street. So people actually have got a go-to product. Lots of other companies are now trying to get these things because I think, theirs is the world's #1, and the research and the development they do. And the fact that you've got another trusted product that you can use straight away. And certainly when I work for Nioxin, whether it be around the UK or advising on stuff they do globally, that the products perform. And that's important, to have a performance product, really, not an iffy product that doesn't really sort of do anything. And I like something that I know I can rest assured and know I'm offering the right advice with the right product, really. And like I say, the styling products, they think I'm a bit naughty saying it, but the way I always say that you can fake it until you can make it, because yes, it's going to make you look like you've got thicker, fuller hair instantly. And hey, that's something you want. You want people to walk out the salon feeling instantly they've got more hair than they came in with.
Amazing stuff. And as Nioxin is the only brand to be recognised by the Institute of Trichologists, did this recognition come about, and what does it mean to be recognised by the Institute?
Well, the Institute of Trichologists, I'm a member of the Institute of Trichologists. I'm a member of the World Trichology Society in the US, the International Association of Trichologists. But the Institute of Trichologists is the oldest and a very credible sort of institute, and it's been going since 1902. A lot of people think trichology is a new thing, but it's been around since 1902. But it's sort of like it's just raising its sort of profile now, really, and becoming more of a sexy sort of thing, if hair loss can be sexy. But you know, the institute is a very credible organization, and yeah, they've backed the Nioxin, and I think it's one of those things to have the recommendation of a very credible organization is one thing that really helps. And you know, we have to make sure that they would only recognize a company that is doing something right, because they certainly wouldn't recognize anyone who was selling some aloe vera on Google.
Amazing. And how can salons and stylists become stockists of Nioxin?
Hey, they can always bounce me a message. That's not a problem. On Instagram, I'm just at Mark Blake Trichologist. They can email me, mark@markblake.co.uk, or get in touch with your local Wella representative. The other thing, like I say, I do a course at Wella, and it's a one-day introduction to trichology. And so it's not all about selling Nioxin products. It's all about telling you about hair loss, and seeing if you want to actually train as a trichologist. This doesn't give you any degree or anything, you know, any badge or anything like that. This is an appetite whetter. Will give you sort of tools to go away with and think, hey, this is something totally different, and it's very thought-provoking. And you know, I'm one of those people. I'm a bit quirky, and I'll be sniffing your scalp, telling you when you washed your hair, and you know, there's lots of things, pulling your hair out, and we go through lots of information to give you some more tools for your tool bag. And I always say, you don't take your thinning scissors or a shaper or razor out for every sort of client, but you've got them there for when you need it. And this gives you information for your tool bag, and when somebody comes in, then you can just pull this information out. We go through scalp cooling for chemotherapy patients. We have a section where we're looking for the possibilities of scalp cancer, but also about vitamins, minerals, what you should eat, what you should, you know, when do you start a hair loss regime? Because, you know, when do you use an anti-wrinkle cream? Do you use it before wrinkles or after? And, you know, the obvious answer is before. So this is when do you start a hair loss regime, is before you've lost it, because you only notice that you've lost hair once you've lost 50% of it, which already you're a bit sort of drowning on this. So we need to get in there early. So it's about covering our bases. So it's a great course if anyone wants to come on it. And I'm not just here to sell it, because part of my mission is to get hairdressers to talk about hair, not holidays. And the more people I can get into trichology, the better, really, or to actually talk about it and give clients that essential information, really.
Amazing stuff. And as you say, it's such a fascinating area, and I can see we've had lots of questions in people keen to ask you, so I'll go through those as quickly as we can. First question we've had is, can you please explain, when using minoxidil, is there excessive hair shedding, and how long does it last?
Yep, when you use minoxidil, that the brand leader everyone knows is Regain, or if you're American, Rogaine. And minoxidil can cause some hair shedding when you first use it. And so it's resynchronizing the hair. So you get that initial bit of hair loss, usually after sort of, I would say probably about 4 to 6 weeks, that should sort itself out. But if it doesn't, that might not be the reason why you're losing your hair. Minoxidil is also one of those things where it can cause your scalp to be a bit irritated when you first use it, because your scalp's not used to receiving something. So, and it's got some alcohol in it. That itching tends to last for a couple of weeks. The other interesting thing with minoxidil, it is highly toxic to cats. So if you tend to use it before you go to bed, and you have a cat that sleeps, comes and sleeps next to you or on your pillow, because they quite often lick things cats do, it can kill cats. It's fine with dogs, but cats just have an issue with it. And I'm not suggesting that if you don't like cats, you go spray it around your garden stop your next door neighbour's cat coming across. But yeah, minoxidil is a very good product, and it does work, but it's all about the application.
Amazing. And a few other questions that we've had. What supplements would you recommend for hair loss?
Supplements are great if you need it. Not everybody needs supplements. Everybody's obsessed with biotin, and biotin is essential for hair growth. However, very rarely are you deficient in biotin. If you go see a doctor, they'll say, take some biotin, because they're obsessed with it. But biotin is contained in lots of foods we eat, and unless you're eating raw eggs or an alcoholic, the chances are you won't be deficient in biotin. And so don't look at supplements that have I saw a patient the other day, and the B12 level on these tablets was 50,000 times more than your recommended daily amount. Nobody needs 50,000 times. You're just looking to push this into your body very gently and just ease it up. So I'd say, obviously Nioxin do a great supplement, and all these supplements, you don't want anything that is, everybody goes into places like Holland and Barrett and they say, oh, this is 3,000% of my recommended daily need. That's going to be better than something with 1,000. I'd look at somewhere where it's about 100% or just under, because your body can't deal with anything that you're whacking in big lumps. And in fact, iron is one of those things. Some people can't absorb iron very easily. They release something called hepcidin, and hepcidin stops your body absorbing iron. And so these people are better off taking iron every other day, because you take an iron supplement, your body releases this hepcidin to stop the iron absorbing. So the next day you don't take it, it stops releasing it. And then the day after you take iron. And so some people, if they can't get their iron levels up, are better to take an iron supplement every other day rather than every day. And their iron levels will go up quicker, which sounds a bit bizarre.
It's fascinating and so interesting. It's just, you'd never know that as the average sort of person, but super interesting. We've had another question, which is a really brilliant question. Can Nioxin be used when someone has lost their hair due to cancer? From my experience, hair will grow back anyway, but I've seen salons promoting using Nioxin and saying it will help hair grow back from cancer.
Yeah, hair growing back from cancer, it usually comes back. You usually get what we call chemo curl. So you end up looking like me, even if you've got straight hair. That doesn't always tend to stay around. That tends to go. Nioxin, you shouldn't use anything for the first 6 months. That's one of the things, to be very sort of cautious of it. But the things like the dermabrasion and things like that to keep the scalp clean after 6 months, you want to be keeping the right soil conditions for it to grow out of. And it's all about hedging your bets. It might have grown back anyway, or do we just cover our bases and make sure that we do? I would be a little bit cautious of using the third step treatment, because it's a rubefactant and it drives blood to the surface. That on a sensitive scalp initially after chemotherapy and things like that can be a little bit sort of aggravating. So it's all about having the right sort of knowledge which you can use, but you should still wash your scalp even after you finish your chemotherapy, even if you've got no hair, because you should treat your scalp like any other part of your body, because it's skin. And so we want to, if you shower every day, then, you can wash your hair. And I think this is the one big myth that a lot of hairdressers still say: you shouldn't wash your hair too much. You can wash your hair as often as you want. You know, modern shampoos have humectants that take moisture out of the air and put it into your hair. And so you are not drying it out. Okay, if you've got a highly colored head of hair, then yes, some of the color might wash out. So what I would say is, okay, you don't wash it as often, but you give it a better scrub. And most people I see who've got thinning hair don't wash their hair hard enough. And they end up washing it like an apprentice on their first week. So it's a bit like rubbing a wet fish over somebody's head because they don't want too much hair to come out. And you need to give it a little bit of stimulation. That hair is going to come out regardless. And it's a bit like coming back off holiday when you've got a suntan and you go in the shower and you don't scrub your skin, you just pat it like this, and all you're doing is keeping this hair in artificially. So when you do give it a good scrub, you get a lot more hair come out, and then you get scared, so you end up washing it not every 2 days or 3 days, you end up washing it once a week, and then more hair comes out and you think, oh, I'll wash it every fortnight. But we need to keep our scalps as clean as possible, really. So, you know, wash it as often as you want. Don't think, oh, I washed it 2 days ago, I can't wash it. If you washed it this morning and you light a bonfire in the garden and it smells of smoke, you can wash it this evening and it won't hurt, as long as you are using good quality products on it.
Fantastic. And Dee would like to know, what's the best route to become a qualified hair trichologist to your level?
There's quite a few companies out there now, and there's a core of really good sort of trichology institutes, really. What I would say is if you follow me on Instagram and just bounce me a message, I will send you a list of the places I would recommend, because I'd much rather you train at somewhere where it's going to be that you can use and be accepted. And so, or just bounce me an email, mark@markblake.co.uk. Some of the institutes now do a little appetite wetter. Like I say, like I do a day course, but other than they do a 6-month appetite wetter where you can actually think, is this for me? Because it's a bit like, I suppose, when you start your career, you start this thinking, is this job for me? And then you think, oh, not really sure. So you don't have to commit too much then. But, you know, I've loved it. And it's one of those things where now I work a lot with the World Trichology Society in the US. And we have lots of active things going on. And most of my life is spent get involved in forums and information. There is so much information going out, so much research happening at the moment in the trichology world. It is fascinating. Every day I learn something. And I think, you know, I'm 59 now, and I've probably got more energy on this than I've ever had in my life. And I'm more interested in this. And certainly I want to get more hairdressers qualified as trichologists or have a knowledge of it, because it can only be good for our industry if we're giving that the right information and talking in the right way.
Fantastic. Another question we've had through, why is it that sometimes your hair follicles feel sore and sensitive, and what can you do to calm it down?
Yeah, well, as we sometimes get a bit stressed, this can happen. We have various things going on underneath where we're hypersensitive. You know, it can be that sometimes, you know, in the right cases, you can just take an antihistamine. It can be that if you're not rubbing it hard enough, it can be that you're irritated to a certain product or something you've actually used. There's lots of things, but calming it down is a good thing. Sunshine normally is good. However, certain conditions can get worse with sunshine, but you would quickly know that's the case. But yeah, it's certainly the Nioxin dermabrasion is a great way of calming it down. You know, when you get cold or you get scared, you feel the hairs on your arms sort of spring up. And this is something called your erector pili muscle, which sounds a bit rude, but it's not. And a lot of shampoos are designed to sort of flex your erector pili muscle. So you're in the shower and you put this on and you feel, oh, I can feel it working already. And all it's done is just sort of flex that. And sometimes that sensitivity you find can manifest itself in the scalp, and it does. It feels a bit sore or painful, but when I look at it microscopically, if it's red, sometimes we need to then calm this down. And it's usually quite easy to do. I say usually, unless there's some autoimmune problem where it's manifesting itself in a different way.
Amazing. That's super interesting about the muscle in the hair follicle. Had no idea.
Yeah, there's lots of things going on underneath the skin. There's a bit of a, or underneath the hair, and it's a bit like a David Attenborough type world. When I show people with a digital microscope what's going on, when they're always like, oh my God, I washed it this morning. I can't believe it looks that dirty. There's that much scale and clogging around it. And yeah, all these things going on in there that we think we're very clean until we start looking microscopically. And then we're thinking, oh dear, I really do need to start addressing the way I'm sort of cleaning or cleansing my hair.
Amazing stuff. And we've probably got time for one more question. And Laura would like to know, where can we get the information we need to help advise and buy the products to help our clients, please?
The information really, Nioxin's website gives you a lot of information there. There are lots of things out there really with hair loss on Facebook and things like this now, where people like myself tend to add input. There is a wealth of information. It's just cutting out the stuff that is rubbish, you know, and you do see people putting up, oh, you should do this or shouldn't do that. And I cringe sometimes when I look at it, but certainly, you know, you can follow me. You can look at some of the things for the World Trichology and the Institute of Trichology have open groups as well as closed groups. So for their members, they have one thing, and then they have open groups for other people to have a look at. And there's lots of reports going out there. But there is one of those things where I think we need to cut out what is rubbish, and so we're given the correct information. Like, come on one of my courses. I can honestly say it's the most fascinating day you will ever be on. You will be blown away, and most people come on thinking, well, it's going to be really boring. I'm not a boring person. I make it very quirky, and it sounds awful, but I realize sometimes hairdressers have the attention span of a gnat if they're not interested in something. So we have to keep it sort of light, funny, and airy, and they actually get really engaged on this and start realizing that hair loss is not a boring thing. It's a great way of actually helping your clients, a great way of making money. I mean, I've got to say, there is so much money to be made in hair loss. It's untrue. And the sooner people realize that this is a great sort of way of, like I say, helping your career, the sooner the better, really.
Fantastic. I think that now brings us towards the end of our session today, but thank you so much for joining us today, Mark. It's been so interesting. I've really learned loads. It's
Brilliant.
amazing.
I've enjoyed it. Thanks so much for inviting me on.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And thank you to our sponsor, Nioxin. And we'll also pop the links to Mark's and Nioxin's Instagram as well, if you want to go and check out any more details. But thanks everyone for joining. It's been a pleasure. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye.